He sat alone, quiet, and noticed, until one day everything changed. Alex Thompson's secrets shocked the entire school. You won't believe what he was capable of. Everyone in school remembers that one student. You know, the one who doesn't quite fit in anywhere. The one who seems to exist on the edges of hallways and cafeterias, invisible to most but impossible to ignore once you notice them. For us, that student was Alex Thompson. Alex arrived midway through sophomore year, transferring from a school across town. From the first day, there was something unusual. Not just the quiet way he observed everything or the way he avoided crowds, but something more subtle, and intensity in his eyes, attention in his movements. As if he carried a storm no one else could see. At first, people tried to befriend him. A few classmates invited him to sit with them at lunch, but he declined politely, then walked away, leaving behind whispers and curious glances. Teachers noticed too, but mostly shrugged. Alex's grades were average, not alarming, and his behavior, while unusual, wasn't overtly disruptive. But there was an air of mystery, and with mystery came rumors. The rumors started quietly. Some said he had a troubled family. Others whispered about fights at his old school. A few were darker, harder to believe, claiming Alex had been involved in something dangerous. None of it was confirmed, of course, but by the end of the first month, Alex had become a figure everyone was talking about. Not in a friendly way, more like a puzzle, a warning, or a secret that hovered in the hallways. It wasn't long before the more curious students tried to draw him out. I remember sitting near the lockers one afternoon, listening to seniors gossiping. "Did you see him yesterday?" one asked. "He just stared at the cafeteria ceiling for 20 minutes straight. Nobody even talked to him. He just stared. I heard he's dangerous." The other replied, eyes wide. Like, seriously? "My brother's friend said he got suspended at his old school for something bad." I didn't know what to make of it. Alex was enigmatic, yes, but dangerous. It didn't feel real. Still, the seed of intrigue had been planted. Then came the first incident. It was a chilly October morning, and the school was buzzing with midterms and weekend plans. In Mr. Sanders' chemistry class, Alex quietly worked at his lab station, headphones in, music barely audible. A group of students behind him started teasing, lightly at first, about his headphones, then escalating with crude jokes about his transfer and where he came from. Alex didn't respond. He didn't even look up. But when the teacher turned away for a moment, something happened. One of the students knocked over a beaker, spilling a mixture that was supposed to be carefully measured. It was minor, but the class gasped not at the spill, but at Alex. He turned slowly, eyes locking onto the prankster, and the room went silent. There was no outburst, no yelling, no dramatic gesture, just a look. But it was the kind of look that made people flinch, the kind that carried an unspoken warning, a weight far heavier than any words. The student who had caused the spill dropped to the floor to clean it, shaking, muttering apologies that seemed to satisfy Alex in the strangest way. From that moment, a subtle fear surrounded him. People started giving Alex space in the hallways. Whispers turned to rumors about how he controlled the room without saying a word. Even teachers mentioned, privately, that he had an unusual aura, something that made them cautious despite no tangible threat. But the mystery deepened. No one knew much about his home life. He arrived alone each morning, left alone, and refused most invitations to school events. Occasionally, he would stay after school, sitting in the library for hours, staring at books, or writing in a notebook no one ever saw. By November, the stories about Alex had reached a point where curiosity and fear mingled. Some students claimed they saw him in strange places after school, wandering the empty hallways at night. Others insisted he had a hidden talent, a skill no one could explain, that gave him an almost eerie presence. For most of us, it became a game of speculation. What was he hiding? What had he done in the past? And more importantly, what would happen next? Then, just when it seemed like we might never find out, something happened that no one could ignore, a moment that changed everyone's perception of Alex forever, and marked the beginning of a story no one in our school would forget. But that moment doesn't come immediately. First, you need to understand the layers of his life, the subtle tension in his daily routine, and the small incidents that foreshadowed the storm. And that's where the story really begins. After that chemistry class incident, Alex became even more of a puzzle. People whispered about him in hallways and online forums, trying to piece together who he really was. Every rumor seemed stranger than the last. Some claimed he had been expelled from multiple schools. Others said he had connections to dangerous situations outside of town. And a few even suggested that he could read people's emotions. Almost like he had some supernatural intuition. Most of it was exaggeration, of course, but there was an undeniable aura around him. He moved through the school like a shadow, present but distant, always observing. Some teachers admitted they were wary of approaching him too closely. They didn't say it out loud, but the tension he carried made them uneasy, even when he had done nothing overtly wrong. For the students, Alex became a legend. Everyone had a story or a close encounter to share. I remember a group of juniors daring each other to sneak into the library after hours, claiming that Alex sometimes stayed late, writing in a notebook nobody was allowed to see. Of course, most of these were dares or exaggerations, but curiosity spread like wildfire. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon, just before the Thanksgiving break. Our school was buzzing with anticipation, some students gossiping about holiday plans, others stressed over midterms. Alex, as usual, was sitting alone in the cafeteria, quietly eating his lunch. He didn't engage with anyone, didn't react to the noise, didn't raise his head when students passed by with teasing remarks. That's when the fight started. Two seniors known troublemakers decided to provoke him. It began with a taunt, a snide remark about his headphones and his quiet nature. Alex ignored it at first. Then, another jab, louder this time, mocking his transfer status. By now, a small crowd had gathered, sensing tension in the air. And then it happened. Alex didn't shout or throw a punch. He simply stood, stared at them for a long, frozen moment. And then, everything escalated. One of the seniors shoved him lightly, not hard, but enough to provoke a reaction. In response, Alex moved with a speed and precision no one expected. In an instant, he grabbed the student's arm, twisted it behind his back, and forced him down onto a cafeteria table. The room went silent. Students froze. Teachers rushed over, but the scene had already shocked everyone. Alex's calm, calculated control was terrifying. No one was seriously hurt, but the message was clear. Alex was not someone to be trifled with. The senior, humiliated and in pain, scrambled to apologize, and the other students backed away, eyes wide with fear. After that day, the perception of Alex changed completely. He wasn't just mysterious. He was dangerous, and his presence carried an unspoken warning. Even the principal commented privately to teachers that Alex had an unusual strength of will, something that demanded respect, whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. Despite this, Alex didn't become aggressive. He remained distant, quiet, reserved, but the aura of fear and fascination surrounding him intensified. People began watching their words, their actions, carefully around him. Rumors grew wilder. Some claimed he had been trained in martial arts. Others suggested that he was hiding something far darker in his personal life. And yet, despite the fear he inspired, Alex's life remained an enigma. He continued to excel in schoolwork quietly, never drawing attention to himself academically, yet always scoring well on tests and projects. He continued to avoid social interactions, always on the fringe of classrooms, hallways, and cafeterias. The question on everyone's mind became, what happened to him before he arrived here? Whispers of troubled pasts, secret incidents, and family problems swirled through the student body. Some claimed he had been involved in fights that made local news. Others insisted he had witnessed or even been part of something serious that no one could talk about. Every rumor had a kernel of intrigue, a piece of the puzzle, but no one knew the truth. And then, one day, the first clue appeared, not in a rumor, not in a whispered story, but in a very tangible, undeniable incident that left the entire school shaken. It was small at first, a note slipped into a student's locker. An inside message that simply read, "Don't judge what you don't know." The handwriting was sharp, precise, and unmistakably Alex's. Students whispered, freaked out, and tried to trace the source. The administration investigated, but Alex, of course, denied everything. That note, however, marked the beginning of a series of events that no one in the school would ever forget, a series that would reveal the truth about Alex Thompson, the student everyone thought they knew, and uncover secrets far darker and more complex than anyone imagined. By December, Alex had become more than a rumor. He was an obsession for many students. People tried to analyze every move he made, every expression, every unusual habit. Some claimed they saw him writing in a notebook with pages full of diagrams, numbers, and cryptic symbols. Others swore they saw him walking behind the school at odd hours, carrying something under his jacket. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was fear. Even those who had once tried to befriend him kept their distance. The aura he carried had solidified into something almost tangible. Attention in the hallways whenever he passed, a hush in classrooms when he entered. Whispers that erupted in corners as soon as he disappeared. One Monday morning, the rumor mill exploded. A senior named Taylor, known for exaggeration, ran into the cafeteria, breathless, waving her phone. "You guys, I saw Alex outside the science lab last night. He was doing something. I don't know what, but it looked dangerous." Of course, half the students rolled their eyes, dismissing it as another wild tale. But a few, including me, felt a chill. Taylor didn't exaggerate like that often. There was something genuine in her panic. That same afternoon, a teacher, Mrs. Carpenter, pulled me aside. "Be careful around him," she said quietly, glancing around as if someone might overhear. "There are things about Alex Thompson that you don't understand. Just stay alert. Don't provoke him, and don't try to be the hero." I was puzzled. The stories, the rumors, they made him sound like a villain or an enigma out of a thriller novel. But hearing a teacher admit there was truth to the mystery sent shivers down my spine. Then, the first real clue surfaced. It was after school, in the physics lab. I had stayed late to finish a project when I noticed Alex working at a distant lab table, his back to me. Something about the way he moved was precise, deliberate, almost mechanical. Papers were spread around him, small mechanical parts and tools I couldn't identify. I felt my curiosity overwhelm caution and crept closer, keeping to the shadows. As I watched, he whispered to himself, voice low but urgent. His hands moved quickly, assembling and disassembling something that looked complicated and fragile. Then he paused, glanced at a small digital screen, and typed numbers rapidly into a calculator. A faint blue glow lit his face, and for a moment, he looked entirely consumed. It was mesmerizing and terrifying. I almost backed away, but then I noticed the notebook beside him. Diagrams, mathematical formulas, notes in messy handwriting, and repeated warnings underlined in red. "Do not interfere. Danger imminent." Observation only. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed in the lab. I jumped, and Alex spun around, eyes locking onto mine. I froze. For a second, the world seemed to stop. Then he nodded slightly, as if acknowledging my presence, but said nothing. He returned to his work, silent, intense, and touchable. From that moment, I realized Alex was far more than a quiet, mysterious student. He was meticulous, careful, and possibly involved in something dangerous, something no one should know about. The rumors about him, half of them exaggerated or fabricated, now seemed like faint shadows of a much darker reality. Over the next few days, whispers grew louder. Students who had glimpsed his late-night work in labs, or noticed him leaving school grounds under unusual circumstances, shared their observations. No one fully understood what he was doing, but everyone sensed the tension, the weight of a secret too heavy for a high school student. Even the teachers seemed nervous. Certain rooms were suddenly off limits, doors locked, or staff warned not to linger near the labs after hours. Alex, meanwhile, remained calm, unaffected, moving with precision and intent, as though aware of the scrutiny yet impervious to it. And then came the incident that cemented Alex's legend and terrified the entire school. During a routine chemistry demonstration in class, an unexpected chemical reaction occurred. A minor explosion sent smoke and fumes across the lab. Panic erupted, students screamed, and chaos followed. But Alex moved swiftly, calmly, isolating the reaction, guiding students to safety, and neutralizing the situation with a precision that was almost inhuman. After the event, everyone was shaken. Teachers praised his quick thinking, but their eyes betrayed something else: respect, fear, and a quiet acknowledgement that Alex Thompson was no ordinary student. It was then that I understood the stories, the rumors, the fear. They were all shadows of truth. Alex had a past, a skill set, and a composure that set him apart, and we were all only beginning to glimpse the reality behind the mystery. And though we were curious, we didn't know it yet. The most shocking revelations about Alex were still ahead, secrets that would force us all to confront the thin line between genius and danger, innocence and darkness. The days after the chemistry lab incident were unlike anything our school had experienced before. The rumor mill went into overdrive. Some students whispered that Alex was working on experiments far beyond the level of high school chemistry. Others speculated that he had military or scientific training we couldn't imagine. Even the staff seemed uneasy, as if Alex carried knowledge and skills that were dangerous when misused. No one dared approach him directly. Students avoided his cafeteria table, teachers gave extra space during class, and hallways seemed to part for him naturally. There was a tension in the air, an acknowledgement, and spoken, that Alex Thompson was untouchable. It wasn't long before the first major revelation hit the student body. One afternoon, during a physics project presentation, Alex's setup malfunctioned unexpectedly. A small electrical device he had been working on sparked and emitted smoke. Panic swept through the room, and students scrambled to get away. Alex, however, moved like a shadow. Calm, precise, and almost unnervingly confident, he dismantled the device, contained the sparks, and restored safety before anyone was hurt. The teachers were both astonished and terrified. Some whispered about calling emergency services, but Alex waved them off, insisting it was under control. After class, whispers exploded. "Did you see that?" one student asked. "He handled it like he was trained for this. He's not just smart," another said. "There's something else. Something we don't know." The tension that had followed Alex for months intensified. He remained quiet, detached, but those of us who observed closely could sense a hidden depth to his abilities, a mix of intelligence, discipline, and something darker, something that suggested a past no one could fully understand. Then came the note. It was found in the girls' bathroom, slipped under the door, and signed. It read simply, "Stop guessing. Some things are dangerous to know." The handwriting was unmistakably Alex's. Panic rippled through the student body. Teachers investigated, but no one could confirm how the note had appeared or what it meant. By now, Alex's presence had become almost supernatural in its effect. Students who once dared to taunt him now avoided eye contact. Even those who prided themselves on fearlessness or bravado grew cautious, choosing silence over confrontation. That same week, a new detail about his past surfaced. A teacher who had transferred from his previous school mentioned quietly to another teacher that Alex had been involved in an incident at his old school, something serious enough to draw police attention. The nature of it remained unclear, but it added fuel to the rumors. Some students whispered about fights, others about property damage, and a few suggested something far worse. Despite the growing fear, Alex never acted aggressively. He didn't seek revenge, didn't escalate conflicts, and remained polite but distant. It was as if he understood the power he held and chose to wield it only when necessary or when circumstances forced his hand. The real shock came during a winter assembly. Students were gathered in the gym when a technical issue caused the sound system to short-circuit, sending sparks flying. Panic erupted as people backed away from the stage. Alex stepped forward without hesitation. Moving through the crowd, he accessed the control panel, rerouted power, and stabilized the system. The entire gym watched, silent and tense. The principal, visibly shaken, praised him afterward, but I noticed the subtle unease in her voice. No one had ever handled such a situation with that level of calm and precision before. Afterward, students clustered in corners, whispering, "He's not just a student," one said. "He's trained for something." And that's when I realized Alex's life, his past, and the skills he possessed were something far beyond high school normalcy. The incidents, the rumors, and the displays of control weren't just quirks, they were a glimpse into a hidden world, a reality that most of us were entirely unprepared for. Over the following days, subtle changes spread across the school. Teachers became more cautious, students more observant. Even the administration seemed to tread lightly, aware that Alex was more than a mystery, he was a force that could not be ignored. And yet, even with all the fear, all the fascination, Alex remained distant, silent, a puzzle that refused to be solved. The hints we received, the notes, the incidents, the small glimpses of his extraordinary abilities were only pieces of a much larger picture. One night, long after school hours, I caught a glimpse of him again. He was at the far end of the empty football field, crouched over something glowing faintly under the bleachers. I wanted to approach, to ask what he was doing, but a sense of caution held me back. Something told me that discovering his secrets on my own terms might be dangerous, or worse, that I might never be ready for the truth. And that's when I realized the harsh reality. Alex Thompson wasn't just the enigmatic student at school. He was a warning, a challenge, and a story that would change everyone who came into his orbit if we survived long enough to uncover the full truth. By mid-January, the air in the school had changed. Alex Thompson wasn't just a mysterious figure anymore. He had become a source of constant tension. Students whispered about him constantly, not out of curiosity, but out of genuine concern or fear. Every odd glance, every note slipped under a locker door, every late-night observation became fodder for speculation. It was during lunch that the first major confrontation happened. A group of juniors, emboldened by teenage bravado, decided to test him. They approached his table with smirks and whispered taunts. Alex, as always, did not react immediately. He continued eating quietly, headphones on, pretending they didn't exist. But then one of the students pushed a plate of food toward him, laughing. "Come on, transfer kid, show us what you've got. Don't just sit there like a ghost." The cafeteria fell silent. All eyes turned to Alex, waiting. There was a palpable tension, as if everyone knew this wasn't just about food. Alex finally removed his headphones, slowly, deliberately, and the atmosphere shifted. His gaze swept the room. Calm, calculated, piercing. It was a look that stopped conversation mid-sentence, froze movement, and made everyone who had approached him regret it instantly. He stood, not aggressively, not threateningly, but with authority. Without a word, he moved closer to the students, gesturing toward the table. The tallest student stepped back instinctively. Alex didn't need to speak, his presence alone commanded attention. Within moments, the juniors slunk away, muttering apologies and avoiding eye contact, humiliated not through ridicule, but through an almost invisible assertion of control. Afterward, rumors spread faster than ever. "He doesn't even have to touch anyone," one sophomore whispered. "He just stops them." The story of the cafeteria incident became a legend in its own right. Teachers exchanged wary glances, and students began to give Alex more space than ever before. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Something about the way he handled the confrontation wasn't just skill, it was experience. Intelligence alone didn't explain it. There was discipline, training, maybe even survival instincts honed over years. And that realization left me uneasy. Then came the note. It appeared in the morning on my locker. Handwriting precise, unmistakably Alex's: "Observe, but do not interfere. Some lessons are not for you yet." My heart raced. The message was both a warning and a challenge. I felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity, knowing that the events surrounding Alex were far from ordinary, and that my own position in the unfolding story was suddenly active rather than passive. The next week, small incidents began accumulating. Teachers reported unusual behavior in their classrooms, chemicals left in unusual arrangements, doors locked or unlocked without explanation, even subtle electrical interference in labs and hallways. Students began claiming that lights flickered or alarms sounded briefly when Alex passed by. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable to adults, but the patterns were consistent. By the end of the week, a group of students confronted me privately. "Have you seen what he's doing?" one asked nervously. "It's like he's controlling everything, testing us. I don't know why, but it feels like he's watching for a reason." I admitted that I had seen glimpses of his late-night experiments. The notes, the way he seemed to anticipate movements, but none of us could piece together the full picture. And that's when the real fear set in. Alex's influence was growing, not through direct action, but through his mysterious presence, his intelligence, and the quiet power he radiated. One afternoon, while walking through the library, I noticed him at a distant table, scribbling furiously in his notebook. I approached cautiously, curiosity overwhelming caution. "Alex," I whispered. He looked up, calm, and flinching, and said simply, "Be careful what you wish to know." It was more than a warning. It was a promise. From that point on, it became clear, the rumors, the incidents, the whispered stories were just the beginning. Alex Thompson's life, his secrets, and his abilities were intertwined with something larger than the school itself, something that could change everything if exposed. And we, the students who had grown obsessed with him, were about to be pulled deeper into his world whether we wanted to or not. By February, Alex Thompson's presence had transformed from an unsettling mystery into a palpable force within the school. Students no longer simply whispered about him. They watched him, documented his movements, and sometimes even altered their own schedules to avoid crossing his path. Rumors had grown wild. Some claimed Alex had a background in advanced sciences, possibly working on projects far beyond our level. Others suggested he had military or survival training. And a few believed he had encountered dangers in his past that left him hyper-aware and capable of extraordinary feats. Then came the incident that nobody could ignore. It was a Friday afternoon, and the school's heating system had malfunctioned. Temperatures inside classrooms dropped rapidly, causing discomfort and concern, but also panic among the younger students. Teachers scrambled, trying to keep students calm, while the maintenance staff worked frantically. Alex moved quietly through the corridors, observing. Some students noticed him slipping into the maintenance room, tools in hand, working methodically, seemingly knowing exactly what needed to be done. Others claimed they saw him rerouting circuits, opening panels, and adjusting components with a precision that was almost surgical. Within minutes, the heating stabilized, and the chaos subsided. The principal, who had witnessed part of the event, later confided to teachers that Alex had done more than just repair the system. He had prevented a potential disaster. Yet his method, his skill, and the speed with which he acted left a lingering unease. It was as if Alex had a knowledge and capability that surpassed not only students but staff as well. Over the next few days, whispers circulated. He knows things no high schooler should know. Students speculated endlessly about the source of his expertise. Was it military? A private tutor? Hidden experiments? Or perhaps something darker, more mysterious? It was during this period that Alex began leaving small, deliberate clues. Notes in lockers, cryptic messages in books. Even subtle hints during class, all suggesting that he was aware of the attention he commanded and that he intended to challenge it, to provoke thought without exposing the full truth. One afternoon, I confronted him in the library. I wanted answers. Alex, I asked quietly, what is all of this? Who are you really? He looked up from his notebook, eyes calm and unflinching. You're asking the wrong question, he said softly. It's not about who I am, it's about what you're ready to see. Some truths are dangerous. The warning chilled me. I realized that everything we had witnessed, the control, the intelligence, the subtle manipulations, was part of a larger picture we couldn't yet comprehend. Alex wasn't simply a student. He was a guardian of secrets, and possibly a participant in events far beyond our understanding. The final, most shocking revelation came during the school science fair. Alex had entered a project under the radar, and noticed by most. When his display was revealed, it stunned everyone, a fully functioning device that demonstrated principles far beyond the expected level of a high school student. The judges were amazed, but others whispered uneasily. Some students, observing the technical sophistication, speculated that Alex's abilities might be dangerous if misused. By now, it was clear, Alex Thompson was not an ordinary student. His intelligence, discipline, and mysterious past had created a presence that reshaped our school environment entirely. Students, teachers, and staff had all been affected in subtle ways, influenced by his calm authority and hidden skills. I began to understand that Alex's story wasn't just about his abilities, it was about the choices he made, the restraint he exercised, and the quiet power he wielded without ever seeking attention. The mystery, the fear, and the awe surrounding him were only fragments of a reality that most of us weren't prepared to confront. And then, just when we thought we had seen the extent of his capabilities, the final event occurred, an incident that would expose the deepest layers of Alex's past, reveal the most dangerous truths, and force every student, every teacher, and every observer to confront the question, what really happened to Alex Thompson before he arrived at our school? The final incident happened just days before spring break. Rumors had been swirling for weeks, tensions high, and curiosity at its peak. The entire school seemed to exist in a quiet state of anticipation, as though everyone sensed something monumental was about to unfold. It began in the science lab. Alex was working quietly, as usual, with devices, notebooks, and calculations scattered across the tables. Students who had dared to peek from doorways whispered nervously to one another. Teachers noticed the unusual energy but remained hesitant to intervene. Suddenly, the fire alarm blared. Smoke filled the lab, and chaos erupted. Students panicked, running for the exits, tripping over backpacks, shouting to one another. The teachers shouted instructions, but the noise and confusion made it nearly impossible to control the situation. Then Alex moved, calm, precise, and unhurried. He navigated the smoke-filled lab with the ease of someone who had trained for far worse than a high school emergency. With quick, methodical movements, he shut off the faulty equipment, stabilized the reaction, and ensured that every student was safely evacuated. In less than 5 minutes, what could have been a disaster was contained entirely because of him. The students were stunned. Teachers were speechless. Even the principal, who had witnessed crises before, admitted later that she had never seen such composed and effective action. For the first time, Alex spoke to the crowd. His voice was low but carried authority. Pay attention to what you see, but do not assume you understand. There is more to this world than meets the eye. Safety is not guaranteed by luck, it is earned through awareness, discipline, and responsibility. It was a cryptic statement, but it resonated. People who had previously feared or speculated about him now understood that his quiet detachment, his control, and his mysterious presence were all tools he wielded responsibly, even if they terrified us. Afterward, the truth about Alex began to surface. A teacher who had known him from his previous school quietly shared that he had survived a series of dangerous circumstances in his hometown, accidents, threats, and situations that demanded extraordinary intelligence, resilience, and composure. That experience had shaped him into someone extraordinary, someone capable of actions far beyond a typical high school student. Alex never sought recognition. He returned to his solitary routines, completing assignments, working in labs, and leaving cryptic notes. But his influence was permanent. Students learned, consciously or not, to respect boundaries, recognize hidden strengths, and consider consequences before acting. By the end of the year, Alex had become a legend in the school, not because he sought attention, not because of rumors, but because of the way he moved through the world quietly, deliberately, with skill and knowledge that inspired awe and respect. People spoke about him long after he left, not as a figure of fare, but as a symbol of what discipline, intelligence, and restraint could achieve. I realized something profound through observing him. Life often hides extraordinary strength in quiet forms. Not all heroes are celebrated, not all dangers are visible. Alex taught the school a lesson that no lecture could deliver, a lesson about preparation, observation, and the invisible power of calm competence. And for those of us who watched, who speculated, and who feared him, there was another lesson too, that the most shocking truths aren't always dramatic or violent. Sometimes they're quiet, methodical, and contained in a student who walks unnoticed through the hallways, until the moment when everything changes. Alex Thompson left our school at the end of that year. His records were clean, his reputation intact, but the memory of him lingered. Students, teachers, and administrators alike had been forever altered by his presence. The stories, the whispers, the incidents, they became part of the school's history. And though no one knew the full extent of his past, one thing was certain: Alex Thompson was extraordinary. He was the student who challenged perceptions, defied expectations, and left a lasting mark, not through spectacle, but through quiet, undeniable strength. The question everyone continued to ask, long after he was gone, remained: what truly happened to that one student in your school?